"By all means," replied the governor, and he signed to the turnkey to open the door. At the sound of the key turning in the lock and the creaking of the hinges, Dante, who was crouched in the corner of the dungeon, whence he could see the ray of light that came through a narrow iron grating above, raised his head. Seeing a stranger, escorted by 2 turnkeys holding the torches and accompanied by soldiers, and to whom the governor spoke bareheaded, Dante, who guessed the truth, and at that moment to address himself to the superior authorities was come, sprang forward with clasped hands. The soldiers interposed their bayonets, for they thought that he was about to attack the inspector, and the latter recoiled for 2 or 3 steps. Dante saw that he was looked upon as dangerous. Then, infusing all the humility he possessed into his eyes and voice, he addressed the inspector and sought to inspire him with pity. The inspector listened attentively, then, turning to the governor, observed, "He will become religious. He is already more gentle. He is afraid, and he retreated before the bayonets. Madmen are not afraid of anything. I made some curious observations on this at Charenton." Then, turning to the prisoner, "What is it you want?" said he. "I want to know what crime I have committed, to be tried, and if I am guilty to be shot, and if innocent to be set at liberty." "Are you well fed?" said the inspector. "I believe so. I don't know. It is of no consequence. What matters really, not only to me, but to officers of justice and the king, is that an innocent man should languish in prison, the victim of an infamous denunciation, to die here, cursing his executioners." Well, we're back with Dante here, and he's finally getting his face-to-face with the governor and inspector. And boy, this is a little hard to read right now. I'm not gonna lie. He is recognizing he has to play the game here, right? We've been talking a lot about performance, how Villefort is performing for everyone, how Dante is the one that seems the least imbued with irony and needing to perform for anybody. He's simply himself, and yet now he's being forced to... This is really hard to even articulate. He's being forced to perform as himself, as a sane version of yourself. Like, I don't know if you could put yourself in those shoes. If you were looked at by someone as not in your right mind, and you had to convince them that you were, how could you act more like yourself in a way that is convincing that you know what you're talking about? It's almost an impossibility. And so this is quite tragic, I feel like, that Dante has to plead and perform as himself, kind of embodying the elements of being imprisoned and saying, no, I'm sane, and all I need, I don't care about the food. I'm not here to lodge a complaint about the food. It's been months. You're here. I want to talk to you about being innocent, and where is my trial? And he's trying to make the inspector and the governor confront the kind of perverted nature of justice. You know, he's holding up justice as an ideal, saying, let justice speak for me. If I'm guilty, then shoot me. But if I'm innocent, let me go. Knowing that he's innocent. But that's what makes this so tragic, is that there's no due process. There's no trial. He's been taken and imprisoned without any reason or due process except for the ambitions of a single man. Let's let that sit for a second. What makes this even harder is the inspector recognizing that Dante is sane, but he's not seeing the full picture. He's saying that Dante has returned to sanity, not that he was never mad to begin with. And so he's beginning this conversation about how likely it is that Dante is going to be a successful convert back to normal civilian. He's going to become religious. He says that he is afraid and retreated before the bayonets. Madmen are not afraid of anything. He's recognizing Dante is recoiling at the thought of being shot. He has hope. He recognizes danger to himself. Oh, man. This chapter is bumming me out. How about a little history lesson? Let's just pivot for a second and talk about how Dumas... We haven't really talked about this since the early chapters. How Dumas is using real places to make his point about things. The inspector talks about making observations at Charenton, which was a real asylum in Paris or outside Paris. and it was kind of infamous at the time. You hear the term bedlam thrown around a lot when talking about madness and prisoners in dungeons and going crazy. And Sherrington seems like the epitome of that term, bedlam, because at the time, I think people would have known it as a shorthand for kind of institutionalized madness. Like in The Inspector too, how infuriating this is to be a prisoner, especially a sane prisoner like Dante, listening to the Inspector kind of like flaunting this flimsy pseudo psychological aspect to himself. Like, yeah, his job is to be an inspector of prisons, and yet he's talking about psychological observations he's made while touring other asylums and prisons. And like, that's not your job, dude. It kind of emphasizes the division that crops up, the lack of humanity that can happen when you are caught up in doing your job and not seeing the people you're interacting with as actual human beings. Okay. I wish I had something nice to go out on. I'm glad you're here. Was that nice? It's nice for me. Oh God, let's just keep going through chapter 14. We'll see you here tomorrow, folks. I'm sorry, this is a bummer. Until then, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.